and barrels are strewn for scores of miles from Prudhoe Bay. And oil spills are everywhere around Prudhoe Bay. More than 550 oil spills a year, and more than 40 toxic substances are spewed throughout the drill fields. These spills are increasing. There was only about 400 oil spills a year 5 years ago. As the infrastructure corrodes, it's getting worse and worse. These spills occur from these automated pumping stations with no one employed, and can often go for weeks or months without being noticed, to the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, where a drunk hunter shot a hole through the pipeline in 2001, spilling 188,000 gallons of oil and shutting down the pipeline for a week. And I was trying to get as far away as I could from oil development to try to find clean water to drink and fish to eat. And this area is a huge wetland, as you certainly notice when walking through it. It is the permafrost that creates this area's largest wetlands in the world. This area only gets about 8 inches of precipitation a year, about as much as the desert, although it is increasing with climate change. But the permafrost holds that moisture in the top layer, and as the top foot thaws out, it remains one of the largest wetlands in the world. But as the permafrost is melting with climate change, it is drying up these wetlands, and that's just one of many impacts. So I had very bad blisters without proper footwear, and so I was trying to raft as much as I could, and I was also trying to catch fish. But despite my 1.5 years of extensive preparation for this journey, I didn't realize the oil companies had decimated the fisheries for scores of miles from Prudhoe Bay, and you can't catch fish when they're not there. So I turned my attention to the edible plants of the tundra. These are woolly lousewort's favorite food of moose and muskox and grizzly bear. And I dug the roots out of the tundra and added Perry's wallflower root and horseradish, which tastes like horseradish, and pink plume leaves and sour grass and fireweed and cottongrass seeds and other edible plants of the tundra. But these tundra plants were very small and not giving me near the calories to carry this 90-pound pack. So I was getting noticeably hungrier and thinner as I was going farther and farther into the wilderness. And this is a pingo formed by the freezing and thawing of the permafrost that pushes these areas out of the earth. You can see my pack on top. This is a caribou trail. We're far away from oil development here. And there's no human trails in the Arctic. This is some of the remotest wilderness left in North America. And this is taken at midnight. There's 24 hours sunlight in the summer in the Arctic. You can tell the time with the compass or the direction with the watch. And the 24-hour sunlight is meaning that the impacts of climate change are accelerating rapidly, because as that sunlight used to hit a lot more snow and ice, it would reflect 80 to 90% of the sun's energy back to space. But as it melts, open land and open water absorbs about 80 to 90% of the sun's energy, creating one of many positive feedback loops or runaway greenhouse effects that scientists have not calculated into their calculations on climate change, meaning things are happening a lot faster, and we have to be a lot more concerned than we thought a few years ago. Now, this is a herd of the Central Arctic caribou herd staying far away from oil development. And this herd is reduced in weight by an average of 25 pounds because of development. And like the caribou, I too was starving because of the oil development. I was not able to catch fish that I was depending upon for the bulk of my food. And by the time I finally reached the Canning River, border of the great Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, 3 weeks into my journey, I was famished on the brink of starvation. And it was finally here I began to find some clean water to drink and fish to eat. This is a grayling that I caught in deep pools in the Canning River, and occasionally I would catch more fish than I could eat, and I would take the fillets with me using chunks of snow to keep them cool. And this is a Pacific loon. Their calls can be heard from miles away. And these are alder trees far north of the historic tree line on the coastal plain of the Arctic Refuge, and they are an indication of climate change. Species are moving north in the northern hemisphere at an accelerating rate, and as the trees and brush begin to take over the tundra, they are pushing out critically endangered species. The reason the birds fly up to this region is the tundra. They can see predators from miles away. In brushland, predators can just pounce on the birds, and many scientists think that these birds probably will not be able to survive a transition into a forested environment. And this is an Arctic fox. They would follow me for miles on the tundra, apparently just curious as to who I was, as would small herds of caribou. But I didn't admire the fox as much as they began to steal my fish. And you can see the summer coat, and they turn all white to blend into the winter environment. And the Arctic fox, too, like almost every Arctic species, is threatened by climate change. The red fox has moved 600 miles north in central Canada, according to the Pew Center on Climate Change. In just the last 25 years, the red fox outcompetes the Arctic fox, pushing the Arctic fox. And moose, too, are recent newcomers to the north slope of the Brooks Mountain Range. They, too, are moving north, and now are seen all the way to the shore of the Arctic Ocean. And I had gone up the Canning River and had crossed the Canning River, and I was trying to find a pass through some of the tallest peaks in the Brooks Mountain Range. I didn't even know if this pass existed. There's very little information on what you can and can't do in this very remote wilderness. Now, as I'm going up Eagle Creek, I was trying to catch fish in this lake at 1 o'clock in the morning. It is amazing traveling with 24-hour sunlight. You can just choose to sleep whenever you want and travel when you want. It really is an amazing phenomenon up there. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to catch fish here. But another impact of climate change is lakes are drying up. These lakes are supported by permafrost. As the permafrost melts, they dry up. In some parts of the Arctic, 50% of the lakes have already dried up, and it is going at an accelerating rate. Yeah, this is now a very common sight. These lakes are critical for the tens of millions of ducks that fly up to breed, as well as loons and other birds. And the native peoples depend on the fish in these lakes, especially in the wintertime. They ice fish in these lakes, and that's obviously the most difficult time to survive the Arctic. And the native peoples in the Arctic are shocked, and they do not know how they're going to survive climate change. I headed up the Eagle Creek Valley. I was studying my maps, trying to figure out how I was going to get to the other side of this mountain range. And I found what appeared to be a pass on the map, and I took a right up Straight Creek, shown here, and I took a left up an unnamed creek that I shared with very cold, rampaging water, and came upon a waterfall that was not shown on the map, and I had to backtrack and climb up a very steep tundra pass. And this is looking back over the mountains I just climbed through. And this is looking on the other side of the pass at the Saddle Ridge Valley. And I went down the Saddle Ridge trying to catch fish, and there's a river that runs through that valley with no luck. And went up and over another pass, again totally without food, by the time I reached these cabins on Lake Schrader. And here I began to catch lake trout, 10-pound lake trout, one after another, just 30 feet from the cabin door. And being with very little food for about a month at this point, I ate pounds and pounds and pounds of fish. And this is looking out over Lake Schrader. My goal is to raft to the other side of the lake, about 5 miles away. But when I began rafting, the winds whipped up, as did the waves, and I didn't get very far in rafting the first evening.